guys, this is What If Deku was in the Zombie Apocalypse Part 2. And next part will be Part 3, the final part. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. And as always, guys, let's just dive right into the video. We start our story off last time we left off, where we see that, well, Kirishima and Deku were going around as Kirishima and Deku came across, well, Ashido, or the acid pink-haired, pink skinny girl, as they would have, helped her out, as Deku would have walked around the pretty much area trying to figure out, if it was any more other people or zombies near them, as Deku would have seen, well, an actual pretty good card, as he wouldn't see anybody around, but little to his knowledge, something in the shadows would have been lurking and watching him, stalking the group, seeing them, and, well, studying them. As we can switch to Deku's perspective, Deku goes around and basically looks at the car, as, well, the car is pretty good. So Deku takes the car back to Kirishima, as Kirishima and Ashido get up, as Ashido is helped by Kirishima, as they see the car's in pretty good condition. They stop their setup there at the pretty much, gas station they were sleeping at, or a convenience store they were pretty much camping out at, as they would get into the car, as the car would have at least a mile worth of gas, or a couple miles worth of gas, as the car would have been kind of a van, so they would have drove off, as they'd be going across, well, a city. They're going to be swerving, dodging, and basically just ramming over zombies left and right. Eventually, they would have came across a dead zone, or a zone that was super just chaos and fire, and cars collapse on top of each other, and all sorts of roadblocks, so they had to ditch the car. As before they ditched the car, Deku would have bumped the car trunk, as they would have taken out their pretty much items or bags, as Deku would have taken off his backpack, put it on, as the trunk would have had a secret compartment, as he would have opened up the trunk, it being a load of guns, him being surprised that someone would just leave a perfectly good car in good condition with a couple miles worth of gas, and on top of that, guns, as Deku would have looked at pretty much the more, unique stuff, like the little touches like the pretty much keychains and other things in the car, as he would have said, well, this guy was definitely a redneck, as he would have grabbed the gun. It would be shotguns, miniguns, even some small pistols, as he would have grabbed 2 shotguns, as pretty much Kirishima would have grabbed. Somehow, some way, this man had a straight up evil sword, like just straight up. So, well, Kirishima took that, and he also took a rifle. So they would have gone on their way, as Ashido would have also had a quirk, but also would have grabbed 2 pistols, as they would have gone out, as they would have gone on foot, as Ashido would have been talking to them, and Kirishima saying that he recognized her, as they would have been trying to talk, as Ashido would have introduced herself to Deku, as she would have been talking about how everything went down for her. We get switched to a flashback of Ashido when all of it went down, as Ashido was in class, as all she heard was a huge scream, as she would have looked around, as she would have seen a behemoth of a person, somebody in the school with a giant quirk, as he would have been mutated, him turning into a giant type animal or creature, as he would have rushed right towards Ashido, as Ashido would have dodged, as Ashido looks at the behemoth of a zombie, as it would have started to lunge, attack, and strike towards her, as she would have asked it off its arms and feet, basically mobilizing it, but her noticing that it was regenerating its limbs back, as she would be super confused, as out of nowhere the military would have shown up in that Pacific area looking for this child, as they would have seen potential in this child, somehow us getting hinted to the military being the cause of this all, seeing that they may have made this artificial virus in the first place, but we're not going to get into that storyline in this pretty much, fanfiction just yet. As what would happen as well, Ashido was knocked out, as she wakes up a few hours later still in the same school. As she looks up, as she sees zombies outside the school, as she fortifies herself in the school. Now she says that she lived there, offer the school food and vending machines, and basically just use school items as weapons, and even used brooms that she sharpened by a pocket knife off of the dead janitor's body, as she would have made spears and also made her own bow and arrow, basically being a whole survivor mode, as eventually she would have had to abandon the school since the school food kind of went bad, and also the school's support and also pretty much boundaries or stability started to go down because more zombies started getting up against the walls and more parts of the school were overrun by zombies. So she had to leave the school. Now what would happen as well, she would eventually go across the roads and through the city, as eventually she would have been pretty much ambushed by that zombie from earlier, as that's where she intertwines with our main cast of characters' story. So, Deku was surprised that she actually survived against that one without any help. Well, we helped her, but still, she survived long enough. So, pretty much the story goes on the same, or, well, their objective goes on the same, them going through the city, eventually them coming across a hospital, as Ashido would have a pretty bad cut, so they would have gone to the hospital to see if they had any antibiotics or bandages, as they would have gone there, as they would have walked in here. They would have started to look around, as they would have seen some sort of zombie in the corner. They could think he was just a normal zombie. He would have walked towards it, as this normal zombie would have gotten up through rage and would have shot a blast of fire towards Deku, pushing Deku into a nearby, canister of, not canister, but sack of toilet paper, since it would be like, it would be a Walgreens they would have came across. Because it would be right next to a hospital, but the hospital was way too overran, or just overall ran down. So it was basically just a Walgreens, as they would have gone there since they needed some antibiotics and also, let's just say, they needed some stuff to patch up Ashido's wounds. As they would have started to get into this scuffle with the zombie, as the zombie would have had dark brown hair, basically looking kind of like a certain student Deku knew, or not a student, but looking like a kid he saw one time in his hallways before the zombie apocalypse, as the kid would have started to blow bubbles out of air, or shields, as he would have started to block the attacks from Kirishima and Ashido, as Ashido would have been pushed back pretty easily since her wound would have been pretty much hit by one of the blasts or one of the shields, as the zombie would have started to punch Kirishima through a couple aisles, as the zombie would have been stronger, plus the powers of this class 1 beast student, if you already haven't noticed the description I gave for this guy, as he would have started to fight against Deku, as Deku would start to dodge and weave, as he would have started to get into a fist fight with the zombie, as he would have started to pretty much, knuckle dust this dude. I mean, like, just dropping him, as eventually his shields would start to kick in, then becoming stronger with each punch Deku lays on him, as eventually Deku would have gotten close enough to make him bite him in the arm, activating Deku's quirk or his zombie powers, as he would have started to go ham on this dude, eventually getting so overwhelmed with rage, ripping off the zombie's head, as he would have fell onto the ground, lifeless. As the zombie's head would have started moving around, as Deku would just crush it. After that, Deku would have gone, back home. Not back home. What am I talking about? I'm talking about another story. But Deku would have, walked off, helping Ashido off the floor, because after that, we would see Kirishima get up from the inhuman punch, as he would have looked up, as he would have seen a, white-haired boy look at him, with a shotgun to his face, as Kirishima would have screamed, saying, "Hold up, bro, you don't have to do this," as the white-haired boy saying, "You're not bit, are you?" As he would have gotten up saying, "Who are you?" As he would have introduced himself as as I think I was pronouncing that right, not so, the older brother of Todoroki. So what would happen as pretty much he would have looked around, as he would have told Kirishima to get up. As Kirishima would have gotten up, as he would have looked at him saying, "Do I know you? Are you some sort of famous child?" As he would have said, "No, I'm not famous, but my father is." My so-called father was. As he would have looked around to the rest of the group, as he would have seen, welcome. As he would have opened up the back of the pharmacy, as they would have made it into like a fortified base for the meanwhile, as they were on the same mission to get out of town. As well, Todoroki would have been there alongside, well, Fumi. But as the story's going on, as they're being introduced to each other, we can switch away from our main characters, as we could switch to across the city to the villains, to another family, the Todoroki family, Toya. As you see that Dabi, or Toya, Todoroki, I'm just gonna say Dabi for narrating purposes, because most people know him as, Dabi. As what would happen is, well, Dabi would have been, well, burning some zombies down near the other opposite area of the city, as he would have been accompanied by other villains such as Duplicate, Twice, that's his name, Twice, Spinner, Stain, and also and that would be it. So what would happen is they would have been walking down after they would have taken down a horde of zombies. They would have been walking down as Dabi would have sensed something weird happening, as it would be turning dark at this time, being about 7 o'clock. As he would have walked around, as he would have sensed something nearby, as Twice would have been making sparky remarks, Toka basically, laughing a little bit, as eventually he would have noticed something happening, as the wood would have shifted, as all things around them would have became still, as it would have been more dead. The area would have been more dead than usual. There would have been no chaos, no screaming in the distance, no zombie growling from miles, as he would have listened closer and closer, trying to focus as hard as he can, as out of nowhere he would have heard screams, as he would have looked around, as he would have seen Spinner getting cut in half by some behemoth of a zombie, or being, or figure, as it would have been covered up in leather, and a huge trench coat of some sorts, and tubes and technology poking out through this leather suit, as it would have been about 7 feet tall, or as big as, well, All Might or Endeavor, maybe bigger, and also a lot more bulkier, as it would have been looking towards the team or the group of villains, as it would have had its eyes glowing bright red, it having a cloud type sword, as it would have looked around, as it would have started to maniacally laugh, like it had sentience, like it was alive, as he was seen through the mask since Spinner, before he went out, cut the mask a little bit open, as he would have seen that the zombie, it looked like a zombie, the skin was dark and grayish, like it was dead, but the eyes looked like pure evil incarnate. It looked like the devil himself, as Dabi would have instantly, on pure reaction, would have shot a huge bolt of flames, as Twice would have multiplied himself and started to disorientate this behemoth of a being or thing, as the thing would have started to cut through Twice's copies and clones as fast as possible, basically ripping and dodging them, as Twice would eventually run off, as Twice would have been able to get away from the rest of the group, pretty much splitting away from the group and us getting to Twice's story later on, but Twice being out of the picture and not being dead at this point. But Toka would have started to fight, as Toka would have started to cut and lash, as eventually the zombie or being or thing would have grabbed Toka from the neck and started to choke her out Thanos style, as the zombie would have started to pretty much go up against Stain, as Stain would have started to go on a sword fight against this thing, as this thing would have been one-handing sword fighting him with this giant sword he had, but a giant cloud type sword, as he would have started to go up against pretty much, well, Stain, as Stain would eventually get cut across the chest with a huge gash, as he would have fallen to the ground, as, well, this being was about to stab Stain, as out of nowhere, a huge, unbelievable blast of flame, burning and even damaging, well, Toya or Dabi, so much so that Dabi passed out immediately after leaving this huge bolt of flames, it even surpassing the biggest amount of firepower Dabi, the biggest amount of firepower even Todoroki or his father Endeavor could even fathom to release, as it would have pushed back this being miles and miles. It looked like the being was completely disintegrated, but it being a stubbly mess of bone and flesh, as it would have been cratered into a nearby building. As Toka would have been badly third-degree burned, her being choked out, since when the zombie was pushed away, it kind of ripped out her throat or her vocal cords, as she would have started to bleed out and die and being in suffering, as she would have not whispered, because her vocal cords wouldn't be ripped out, but her throat would have been cut a little bit, as she would have pointed towards the gun and would have been crying towards not Dobby, but crying towards Stain, as Stain would have said, "I understand, Toka," as he would have grabbed the gun and would have killed her, or put her out of her misery, as Toka wanted that. Because, well, let's be real, if your throat was ripped out after getting brutally beaten down by probably a 7-foot behemoth bodybuilder type of monster, after that you get burned all over your body and you're bleeding out in pain against the hard concrete floor, I'm pretty sure you would want to die. So pretty much what would happen is, well, Stain picked up Dobby and went across their mission, as they were about to get out of the city. After that, what would happen is, well, we would see that the zombie, the thing, started to regenerate. As we get switched away from that, as we get switched back to the main group of characters, our main cast of characters. As we would see the group basically talk to each other, introducing themselves as the Todoroki family, as Todoroki would have started to make a plan to leave the place to move back on the path towards outside of the city. As out of nowhere, they would have heard a huge screech outside, as they would have seen something unbelievable, something defecating. Not defecating, but something that looked like it was defecated upon. Something unhuman, something not even remotely holy. As we get switched away from that, where we end off our story for part 2. So, I hope you enjoyed part 2. It's a little bit shorter, but for part 3, we will be introduced to the main goal of this all, as we will get introduced to how this virus really came to be deep down inside, and also we will get introduced to the true, pretty much, goal. But overall, I'm gonna leave it off here, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys like and subscribe, and as always, guys, have a blessed day. Deuces.